Have you ever had a life event happen, no matter how big or how small, that completely shifts the way that you look at your life and the way that you look at happiness? This is the conversation we're having on the podcast today with Lawrence Lotze, and I'm super excited to be diving into this topic with you. We're talking specifically about how a diagnosis of having a brain tumor changed Lawrence's perspective on happiness and ultimately many different things in his life. Before his diagnosis in 2019, Lawrence was chasing happiness in the form of success, money, and external factors. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this on some level because I know for my own self, I used to define happiness by those things as well. Oftentimes, that's a pre-programmed story that kind of has to unravel as life continues on and as we continue to grow and we become more conscious to life around us. So, specifically in this episode, we're talking about chasing money and the materialistic version of success, how his life changed when he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, what COVID has taught us about our relationships and ultimately our happiness, and some very tangible and small and realistic mindset shifts to help you live a happier and more fulfilled life. Let's get into this conversation with Lawrence. And if you're loving what you're hearing and if you enjoy the show, please be sure to tag us online. I love to know when you're listening. Let's get into it. Lawrence, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be such a great conversation. I'm so excited to be connecting with you. I always learn so much from you. I know everyone is going to learn a lot today too when they're listening in. So, my first question that I'm going to ask you today is, what is happiness? What does it mean?
To me, a lot of people think of happiness just as that moment that makes you smile and, it keeps you elevated and you do things you want. Don't pretty much, it does fall into that category. But obviously, with my own personal story of overcoming a brain tumor and not knowing how I was going to go with that and the impact on my family and financially being ruined by it as well, one of the biggest things I've learned about happiness is not just it's all the big things, it's all the small things. It's this very small moments of having laughter, silliness, doing something, as easy as sitting outside with my son and we're kicking a ball, or sitting outside and having a giggle over a laugh. Those small moments is what has become more important to me for happiness. Where before my tumor and everything else, when I was chasing success and money that a lot of people that we do, and I'll put my hand up and say, you're chasing the wrong things. That is what I thought was happiness. Become rich, become famous, become known. That'll make me happy. At the moment, that I don't care about those. It's about those smaller things and those laughters and moments with the actual people that are around you.
That's so great, because when you said that, you just sort of triggered in my own mind. I remember when I first started on this self-development journey, which has been a long and winding road. When I first started on the journey, though, I remember sitting down. I was seeing a therapist at the time, and I remember sitting down with her. There's more. Like, I feel like there's just something else that I want to do. Like, I don't know if it's like be famous. Like, I don't know if it's like, but I was like, I feel like there's just something more. It's something bigger. So it's funny how, like, I feel like when people, I don't know if you agree about this, but when you're trying to like find your purpose, it's almost like turning like I have to be bigger, I have to do more, I have to have like more money, more this to validate the purpose that I'm trying to find from within.
Yeah, totally true. I mean, my story originally, when I started this brand, the Wolf of Queen Street, my podcast and social media brand, it was a knockoff of the Wolf of Wall Street. It was, I wanted to be Jordan Belfort. My original photo was me in a white suit standing with my arms open in front of Auckland City, the main city in New Zealand. And it was this whole like, oh yeah, I want to be successful and I want to be the man and do all that sort of stuff. And you're chasing all these things that you see in others and other people. And over the time period and with the curveball that life threw me, you realize, but hold on, that's not actually what it is. And that's not what it actually is about. And not that I wish it on anyone in the world, what I went through, but because of what I went through, I was able to realize actually what is important and what is stuff I should be paying attention to. All of a sudden, that's that the money and the success fell out the way. And it was like, okay, what is next? What is actually really important, and realization when you go right down to the bottom. And it allowed me to refocus on where I should be doing stuff. And one of the biggest successful insights I learned from that and it was the same about, it's very similar to happiness, is that there's enough for all of us. There's enough for all of us in the world. We need to get over this whole society thing that that person, that guy, that girl over there has got that much, and I want that much of them, or I want to take it from them. There's enough money, there's enough happiness, there's enough insightfulness in the world that we can all be at that level. And once we all realize that and are happy about that, which unfortunately a lot of people don't like to share, I think it'll make such a big difference.
That's such a valid point to say that. And it's true. I think that a lot of the time people don't really see what, first of all, what they have in front of them, because it's so true. Like there's so many, it's like, what are you chasing at the end of the day? What does, somebody else's life being so shiny and perfect make you feel like you need to have all that too, when the reality is it couldn't be further from the truth. Like just because someone has X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that they're happy. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean that they are actually content with all they have,
It's so true. So many of the top entrepreneurs in the world and biggest, how I don't want to use the word celebrities, let's say business owners out there, and female executives and all of the rest of them, they've come out all publicly and said, the loneliest place is at the top. The hardest place is at the top. Not saying it's don't go for it and everything else, but don't believe that there's actually this amazing moment or this realization or this happiness at the end of that rainbow. It's a very hard struggle, to go there. One of the things I think also in society that we learned over the last period of time is, depending where you are in the world and the effects of COVID and putting the country into lockdowns, each person's lockdown experience is totally different from someone else. But what we had a real realization there was, once you got put into a lockdown situation and you lost the freedoms that you thought, the simple freedoms, going down the road, getting a coffee, seeing a friend, talking to someone, there was also a big mind shift of, hey, I'm missing out stuff that's actually important. And it was some of those items that if you're paying attention, you realize that is what my life needs, not the other side. So talking to a best friend, going in for a walk, meeting up a mate and having a cup of coffee, or going down to the bar and having a drink. Those are the sort of stuff that we started missing. And that is actually stuff what you should realize is actually high up your priority list, because that's what you crave in your life.
So true. And what I think about the most, especially in that time of being in lockdown, and like, I'm in Canada and we've had some really crazy restrictions and all of that kind of stuff. Not as bad as other parts of the world, but I would say pretty intense. Like we were in a lockdown for like 18 months or something like that. Yeah. Anyways, so what I would say from that though is, like, as much as that time was like such a crazy time, and I kind of feel like the worst part of it is kind of past now, but you never know. I hope so. But what I think back to in that moment is like those times of like togetherness. You know what I mean? Like those times that are so memorable in a time that was so chaotic. I think about, okay, yes, like, we're all on a Zoom and we're all like chatting through a Zoom, and like, not ideal way to see your family, but new ways to communicate. Like, the new ways to, I don't know, have like family game night over the phone. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I think back to that. And like, I think as much as like the chaos is very valid, I think what I'll always remember from this, how much joy it brought to my life at the same time, which is not something I think a lot of people talk about. It hasn't been joyous for everybody though either. So you can't like, and like, I mean, I've struggled a lot as well. Like, don't get me wrong, but
yeah, I think that's a true statement. Look here, the spectrum of where we enjoyed or didn't enjoy in your life, and please don't throw anything at the device you're listening at the moment. There was people that are on the far side of the spectrum that had some of the worst times in their lives just because of what it impacted, life, loss, and everything else. And my condolences and everything, or full respect to everyone on that side. But on the other side as well, we had people, like you said, you had moments. We had, for something like 12 weeks running, we had a weekly quiz night with all our friends, and we set up and we had, 15, 20 people on a Zoom every Wednesday night, and having a drink and going through a quiz, and so much more laughter and stuff. And it's funny because in some instances you saw the people were more social because I was sitting at home. I could sit in my PJs if I wanted to. They were my close friends. I didn't have to get doled up or do anything. So more people actually got onto it easier, where if you said, hey, I'm having a barbecue or something next weekend, half the people might have turned up. So all of a sudden there was more social interaction. So people were so eager to get it, they grabbed every opportunity. So it did lead into a lot of those situations where you got onto a Zoom. It's like, okay, guys, let's have a catch up tonight, and like 30 people jumped on. So it was amazing that, but But at the end, it shows a very interesting part of society, and that is that we can survive in hardship and turmoil and that, but fundamentally we still need personal touch. We still, over time, the evolution of us as human beings and happiness, we need actual personal touch. So there's very few hermits in the world that could survive in their space. And I laugh because I think of my dad. He's one of those very few 1%ers in the world that he's absolutely happy in his own space, and he's like, "Yep, I'm good. Leave me alone as long as I've got my dog and I got some tools and I can build stuff at home. I don't have to do anything else." But we showed that we crave that touch, and not just like the touch. It's been around other human beings and the social interactions face to face. It showed us that more, and I think it's where a lot of people will realize as well is how much they mean, right? So a lot of people would have realized they're going, I'm just somebody, and then through COVID, they would have realized, but hold on, there's someone else out there that keeps wanting to see me. There's someone else out there that keeps wanting to be around me and stuff. And all of a sudden, giving that person that might be a little bit in doubt about their identity themselves, realizing that, hold on, there's actually other people that want my energy and want, what I bring to the world around them as well.
That's so true. It's such a good point. And I think a key thing there too is like it's really forced people, and you said this a little bit earlier, it's forced people to reevaluate like what you have going on in your life. How much are you willing to stay in a situation that's unfavorable, that you don't love being in? Like I know for myself, I lost my job right at the start of the pandemic and I was happy. I was like, I had wanted to leave for so long and I never would have left, And so I'm a pretty spiritual person also. So I like to think that the universe brings everything I need in every single moment. But with that in mind, like the way that people get to like expand and like you can see that things can be done in a different way, that what you've been doing your whole life, if you're not happy about it, life literally is too short to be doing the things.
So true. Not to go back and put a point on myself, but just, from my experience before, my brain tumor was in the middle of 2019, so only just recently, in a couple of years. Before that moment,
ask you about that. I want to hear the story a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll go into the next one, but there was a realization of you had everything until you had nothing. And then it's and it's in those moments where the true reflection of what is, the small things, what do you actually want to take away from it? Like you're talking about losing your job, but it was something you wanted and then put you down the path. This moment in my life totally, put me down a way different path when I was 6 months earlier. And it's sometimes life or energy, whatever you want to believe or so out there, sometimes directs you, pushes you. But the biggest thing out there is just from when you're thinking about it, don't ever think about it that's one person putting their finger down on you and going, hey, you get in this because of that. That's one thing. Don't ever accept that. So whatever your belief, your faith system is, no matter how it curves, don't ever feel that it's a person like on an ant doing that to you. Because that's one thing that a lot of people, like even myself, going, why me? Why did you push me? Why did you take me? Why me? And unfortunately, it's you should never think about it, me. Don't get me wrong. It's a hard time, especially if you're going through a challenge, and then come out of it and realize, but if it was, you come out the other side with a simple one, because of that, what can I give now? So it's more like you didn't, in the beginning, it was like, why am I being hurt? And then I come out the end of it and have a realization of why I've been changed to give more to the world. And then it's following that path. And you'll notice some of the greatest speakers, influencers, I hate the word influencer, some of the biggest people that a positive message, let's use that, the right positive message and aren't being paid for it. Unfortunately, they've come to that moment and been able to show to the world from a moment of darkness. The ones that come out the best and the biggest and speak out there in the world are the ones that don't turn around and look at that moment and go, why me? They come out of it and go, hey, that did happen. And that was my hardship, but now I'm happy because I had that realization and I can share that to the world.
So true. And when you had your diagnosis, what was like your initial reaction? And then, have you always had the mindset that you have now, or was that experience what really shifted? I've never been in that position. I have no idea what it would feel like to get a diagnosis like that, but I feel like you're kind of faced with like a choice. And I have someone very close to me in my life who is going through a really challenging medical time right now. it's a very like complex situation, and he chooses to look at it with like, this is what it is. Like, this is what the cards that I've been dealt, and like, this is just is what it is. I'm going to continue to do the best that I can with what I have and go on, right? But he's always been like that. So I'm curious from your point of view.
I'll give you a bit of a time run through, so so you have a better understanding to anyone that's listening as well, has a vibe and feel about how I went through it. But just saying with your friend saying it is what it is. One of my now modern day big statements is it pretty much is that's the way it is. And coming through a moment like that, you just realize that's the way life is, or that's the way business is, or people come to me and go, "Hey, you got to pay this much for something." That's what it is. There's nothing I can change about it, and you learn that real quickly. But going back to my story in 2019, so I started this brand, as I said, the Wolf of Queen Street, wanted to chase success and money and all of that in the beginning part of 2019. And I was successful at that stage. I had self-employed, multiple businesses, investment properties. The year in 2018, myself and my family traveled all around the world, and we had all of this sort of tap on the shoulder, the old style of like tick box, I've made it, right? Happy family, money in the bank, all the rest of it. And it came into the beginning part of 2019, and I started feeling a little bit off about myself. And I was like, okay, I'm getting in my mid 30s. I'm born in South Africa, so I'm a large gentleman, played sport. A lot of my body's been damaged from sport. Maybe 2018 was too hard. I'm just slowing down a little bit. And after a couple of months, I finally said, no, I need to go see a GP. I need to go see my doctor. And as males, we're exceptionally bad at this. We would never admit something's wrong. We'd never go to a doctor. And for something gnawing at me, said, I got to go and check. So I went to my GP and said, hey, this is around March, April 2019. And I said, hey, something's just not right. Can you let me know what's going on? Do some tests. They ran some tests, and they came back to me within a week or two, within a week later, said, hey, Lawrence, there's something in your test here that we've seen that we shouldn't be seeing, firstly, in males. And then secondly, the level shouldn't even be like this. So the hormone that they saw originally was something called prolactin. It's what females produce when they're breastfeeding. And the level I had in my body was 4 times the level of a breastfeeding mother.
Wow.
So they looked at it, they went in and went, okay, that's a bit weird. Not sure about this. So they said, okay, we're going to send you off to a specialist, and we're going to do some more tests. Went over to a specialist and said, we're going to do a scan, an MRI scan, because, and it always makes me laugh when I think about this moment. He goes, yeah, there's a very common situation where you find a very, very small growth at the back of your pituitary, which will impact how your hormones and so react. So in your brain, you've got your pituitary gland just underneath it, and it fundamentally controls all your hormones in your body and how things work. Now, not to be one gender way, females will totally understand hormones up and down, all the rest of it. Us males, we have no understanding of how this actually works. And most males, when I speak to, go, hey, I don't have hormones. I don't go up and down and emotional and all the rest. They don't realize that exists in their body, right? But it's there. So the doctor says to me, okay, go for an MRI scan and I'll see you a week later. So I thought, okay, I'm still, thinking everything's good. He said to me, it's something small. So myself and my wife, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, we go in for an MRI scan, do the scan. And an hour afterwards, he phones me. And every time I think about this, my hair just stood up in the back of my neck. An hour after, he phones me and he says, Lawrence, I don't want to see you next week. I want to see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., the first lot I have. And it was at that moment of when, realize if something was simple, I wouldn't be tomorrow morning. If something was easy, it wouldn't be tomorrow morning. I knew at that moment, no matter what, my life was going to be totally changed for the rest of it. So the next morning at 8 a.m., myself and my wife walk in. Specialist pulls up the scans and says, hey, there's Lawrence's brain. And the wife makes a joke that, okay, cool, I've actually got some brains. So after we get over the joke and have a little cackle, he says, yeah, we found something and it's not what we thought. And he brought up a scan, and I've got something next to me and I've always got it with me. And he said, we found golf ball. So anyone can see there's a golf ball in my hand right now. Golf ball size tumor wrapped at the back of your pituitary gland. And it's encased the whole thing, and it's actually pushing on your optic nerve and your carotid artery at the back of your neck. I didn't realize at that moment that I'd lost something like 30 to 40% of my sight had been lost because the growth had grown on my optic nerve and was actually shutting down my sight. A test later on actually showed that. It was also growing towards my carotid artery. To anyone that likes horror films will know about this one. This is the one that they always act like it does the scenes. And it totally encased my pituitary gland, which controlled all the hormones, and that's why everything was out of there. And it was a realization because the specialist said to me, we've got to get this sorted straight away. And it was at that moment where someone in my life said to me, I can't tell you tomorrow, next week, or next month where you're going to be, what you're going to be, or if you're even going to be alive. And to have that realization, like I do not wish it on anyone else in the world, but it's when you hit that realization, you have a real think and figure out what is actually important and what is actually, to me, to my family, to everyone around me, what I need to do and what I should be doing, what I should be focusing on compared to the stuff that I had on the other side of the box of, chasing the success and chasing all this money. This is where that was that sort of learning. Obviously, so 6 weeks later, on the 26th of June, 2019, which is actually my birthday, I went in for brain surgery. So on the day that I went to celebrate the day I was born, I now call it the day I celebrated that I was alive. Went in, obviously the surgery was successful. I'm sitting here now. But the surgery was the first stage of it. There was there to remove my whole pituitary gland. There's other conditions as part of it. And that was the first step for myself to learn sort of the new me, which I still now, years later, still figuring out, because to anyone that understands hormones in your body, without a regulator, I have spikes up and down. There's days I can't get out of bed. There's days I'm manic. So almost I go through, and I don't want to call myself this, but there's days I go through like a manic depressive state. I'll go up, I'll come down. I have no control of my anger. I've got no control of my emotions sometimes. Like I said, the tiredness. So it does this big cycle continuously over time. There'll be stable periods. There can be weeks of stable, and then it can just go up and down and things like that. So there was all of these moments. But like I said, through those periods and then been ruined financially, and that's another story around insurance not paying out. I learned, what, as you said, what was important, and my mind shift changed, and I changed to what I actually should have been doing in life and where I should be doing it and what I should be focusing on. And my brand afterwards and what I became totally changed, because it was like, stop chasing the success and look here, I love every single one of my guests on, but I was all like top CEOs and how to make all the big money and everything else. And it went straight away into, where's the people that can actually help other people? Where's all the other brands? So the mental health, the business startups, and now I've become really close in the property market in New Zealand, where it's one of the most expensive markets in the world. And there's a lot of people that are either in it or out of it. And the people out of it are not out of it because they necessarily can't afford it, but they're also out of it because they don't have the right education. And because I've been provided all this information, I've got it myself, I'm like, I'm going to give it away freely. So I'm going to go out and show people and help people and give them all that knowledge. And I've now started part of my marketing and my brand, and some people might be calling it a bit of a guerrilla tactic. I've gone out and called myself the top brand in my country that doesn't sell you anything or doesn't expect anything from you, because we live in a society that I'll help you on my left hand, but my right hand's already out. It's because I want you to pay me. I want you to give me something. And I've started going out now and going, that's not me anymore. I don't need you to give me anything for me. Be willing to share it, because believe you me, I know the moment of when I've got nothing. So why would I want to take something from you? I want you to have as much as you possibly can so you can make the choices in your life.
That's so like beautiful and crazy story all at the same time. Like, and 2019 wasn't that long ago. So,
No.
it's very like definitely something you're still like navigating and figuring out and all. Like, I could only imagine what a journey. But then at the same time, you're actively choosing every day to do something different, to add value to the world, to help people. You know what I mean? And I think that's very admirable because, again, could have been like, well, I've lost everything. Like there's nothing left. But meanwhile, you're like, you know what? I lost a lot of things, but I also realized what's really important in my life, right? And you
Yep.
can't put a price.
Yeah, you can't. Again, when in some of the podcasts I've done previously, when we speak specific about this in mental health, there was that my surgery moment and a few realization was only one of about three sort of really deep moments. Another one happened when I learned I bounced on a mortgage and I realized that I was almost financially ruined. In February 2020, which is even more recent. And then in the same month, myself and my wife had a realization because I'd shifted so much and become such a different person. We couldn't see eye to eye. So we had to come up publicly and say that we weren't sure our marriage was going to make it. Being together at that stage, 13 years married, being together for almost 15 years, we weren't sure we could get through to it. And it was at that moment there when doing that was sort of the real absolute pure darkness. And I say to a lot of people, it's when you have absolute darkness and absolute hidden bottom that if you're willing to pay attention, now don't get me wrong, sometimes that consumes all of you and you can't take anything from it. But if you're willing to just look up or try and pay attention, you will always see a very light glimmer of light at the end or in front of you. And it was at that, when I hit that, I was, so eager to try and find something. I was able to find that light in my sort of the end of my tunnel, to put that analogy there, which I then went forward and took the steps to be able to take 1 month and resolve and change everything over 2022 to get my life as back to normal as possible, which was not normal up the same ladder, but it was actually up a different ladder to a different path normal, because everything had to be changed and everything had to be reshifted. Personal life, family life, marriage, business, my focus and everything else. And it went down that way.
So your life literally did a 180 in every single area of it.
I did, except the hunger. The hunger before that was the hunger to be successful. Now it's the hunger to help. That hunger doesn't go away, which was great for me. It's great for me, but I think my wife hates it because I was talking to a very close friend of mine. I was just recently on the show. We were meeting up about a month or so ago. We're having a discussion, and it was on something called success. And he was talking about he had a client, and they gave him this weird analogy of what is the one thing to buy, which means a tick box that you feel you've been successful in life. So they gave the example. I won't share it because it's their information. So I came home and I said to myself, oh, that's really interesting. So I said to my wife, what do you think is the one thing to me that if I achieve it, I would say, tick, I've been successful. And she turns around straight face without even blinking. She says, Lawrence, that'll never happen. She goes, you're going to achieve something and I'm going to achieve success. She goes, you're going to get something and straight away you're going to go, okay, what is the next thing I'm going to chase? What is the next thing? And that's the sort of entrepreneurship blood that I've had since a kid. And they're always chasing that more and more. And I turned around and I said, it's so true, because I can't say, nah, what is that thing, right? What can I put on my shelf and go, yeah, my life's done? And it's different ways of thinking. Like I know a lot of friends that said, hey, when I buy this, or when I get this, or when I achieve this status, or when I hit this threshold, and some of the people I know, it's nothing major. It's not, hey, I want $1 million in my bank. It's like, hey, I want this small item that I know that I've owned, that I've been chasing, and it's to each people, it's that's their own little target. But some of us can achieve that, and some of us are always chasing that.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I'm very much that type of person as well. Like, I'm very grateful for everything that I have, but it's a driver to want to do even more. You know what I mean? Like, you saying that, I'm like, yeah, no, there's nothing that would like, because at the end of the day too, I think stuff is just stuff. But if you're trying to like define success, like, I don't even know how I would define it, to be honest. But I think that it would be really living out your sole purpose every single day, like doing those things that you want to do every single day without worrying what other people think about it. Because so many people worry about, I can't do this because all of these people are gonna be mad that I do it, or all these people aren't gonna understand. And it's just kind of like, okay, you know what I mean? Who cares? Move on and just do it anyways, you know?
Yeah, that was so true. One of the biggest things I learned as well is you've just got to you got to learn what is important from what other people think, right? And look, don't get me wrong, my friends, my close friends, my family is what pulled me through. But you have a realization of actually, sometimes we live in the society, unfortunately, the Instagram and the Facebook, where we seek that recognition, we seek the approval, and we do something and people go, oh no, don't do that. You got to also live in the world where I make a decision for me or my family because it's for me and my family, and I do not care what you think about it. And I do not care if I get 1 likes, 1,000 likes, or I get any comments or any supports on social media wise. And you've got to live it in that way, and that's one of the biggest things I do. So if I go and put stuff out there or go and talk out there, and I know I'm doing it from the goodwill of what I'm trying to achieve, if someone over there turns around, before the injuries, and someone turns around there and wants to go, oh, that's rubbish and it's all BS and stuff, I'll turn around and take it really, really personally and be really aggro about it. I allow them to have that freedom. I allow them to have that choice and have that thought pattern and that, because I still got to keep my focus, because we can't help everyone. We can't help everyone be happy, because fundamentally we are all close enough to each other, but we're not in each other's boxes, and we're not in each other's ways, thought patterns, and in sync with each other and stuff like that. So that's where you got to figure out where you're going and how your block rolls. And I use that block because a block doesn't roll very easily, but you got to figure out how your block actually rolls, and then have the realization of the things that's around you. And if you think of a block, your block and someone else's block rolls totally 2 different ways. And if you see that, don't ever try to mold them. Don't try to make them your size or their size or the way you're going like that, because it just doesn't work. That's theirs and yours is yours. But you can respect it. And that's the biggest thing. If you give them respect of how that changes, you'll be surprised at how quickly in sync it comes. And that's where I think a lot of big brands in the world, or a lot of big individuals, after years of having clashes, they had a realization of, hold on, we can't clash, because we're never going to evolve to the same thing. Once we have an understanding, it just evolves so much more.
That is so good. And it's so true. And, I think that can be applied in every single area of someone's life. Like you said,
So
do everything that you're doing for the betterment of your life and of your family, for your family, and can't really make people do the same thing even for their family, because that might not be what's in alignment for them in their lives, right? Like you can't.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome. I love it. Lawrence, I could talk to you all day, but I'd love to ask you this one last question before we sign off here. And it's one tip that you would leave our audience to, live a happier life, maybe every day, starting today.
One of the biggest tips that I can learn was, in life, we've got a lot of decisions, and the fear of making that decision holds us back being able to achieve something or go forward, or just to move ahead in what our